Welcome back to Weekend Breakfast with me, David Bull. It's absolute chaos in here. I've no idea. Who are these people? Good morning, good morning. Well, I'm joined by the TV wife, Dr. Rennie Hunderkamp, and Clem Muldoon joins us this morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
I will turn to you in just a second. I was just going to say a few things. Great shirt, says Bella. Good morning to you. Brightens my day. Thank you very much. It's very tight, actually, after being on that cruise, let me tell you. And then Mr. Steve says, David, I'm reading in the Telegraph that our alleged Brexiteer unelected Prime Minister is doing a deal with the EU that allows the ECJ to have certain powers over Northern Ireland. Yes, Rennie and I were talking about that before we came on air. That is not Brexit. Well, you're absolutely right. That is not Brexit at all. Now, also, I'm asking this morning, and this was all based on yesterday when Rishi Sunak said, do you have to be a fool not to understand why we can't cut taxes? And then lots of fools popped up, like James Dyson and various people like Charlie Mullins saying the government has got this completely wrong. So I want to know, who would you prefer to run the country? Would you prefer Rishi Sunak, or do you think we should actually have Charlie Mullins? I rather like him. You know, you can trust a plumber. Then you've got Richard Branson and you've got James Dyson. Well, he's a very successful man as well. So let me know. The number 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. You can tweet us at TalkTV and tweet me at Dr. David Bull. And that brings me nicely to Claire Muldoon.
Well, there we go. Welcome back. Welcome home.
Thank you very much indeed. How are you?
I'm very well.
Good. Very lovely to see you.
And you?
Yeah, so lots in the papers.
Lots in the papers. Yesterday, the headlines were about Rishi not wearing his seatbelt, which I thought was just ridiculous. Who cares?
Rennie didn't even know it was law.
Well,
so
Rennie,
there's a lot on Twitter about that. People saying, is it the law that you have to wear a seatbelt?
Well, I didn't realise in the back of a cab you have to wear.
Exactly.
I thought that was the only place that was exempt.
Yeah,
that and an ambulance, clearly, but clearly not.
So that's interesting.
But you know, everyone's like, whoa, you know, fine. It was as bad as eating cake, right? However, what it did do...
You would have thought that someone in that car would think, we're not going to post a social media clip that you don't have a seatbelt.
I wonder if somebody in that car said, you know what, Rishi, take your seatbelt off because there's a lot of rubbish going on that we need a new front page.
You're such a conspiracy theorist. You're probably right.
Because that's never been done, is it? A bad news day. Let's slip out some.
But I'll tell you, what it has been hiding is the fact of Zawawi fights for his political life after admitting tax error.
So this is the front page of the Observer. It's in the Telegraph as well.
Yeah.
Apologise to Rennie.
Why is Rennie talking herself in the third person? That's quite disturbing at this time of day.
I am very jet lagged and I'm waking up at 2 o'clock in the morning.
She's really irritating this morning. Well, more than usual.
Okay, this is going to be a bit of a match here today, right? Okay, I'm neutral. The Australian Open is in Melbourne. It ain't here. Right, so we've all got tax returns to do, or quite a lot of us have to do at the 31st of January. Yeah. So what excuse are we going to give?
I forgot to pay £1 million.
I just forgot. Oh, let's see. And let's see who gets away with it and who doesn't. Have the government actually paid this?
Well, he didn't get away with it, did he?
No.
I mean, he got £1 million fine. Now, they decide the size of your fine, if you upset the tax office, by how wrong they think you've been. That's a pretty hefty fine.
But it's very, very subjective, though. It's the same as the IR35 for self-employed people who believe themselves to be a brand and are self-employed, and the HMRC are going after them.
They are. Even though they were going to ditch that legislation, weren't they? And then they've reneged on that.
Yeah. They have. And people that I know are trying to appeal it have lost their appeals, and then it's going to be so much money to do it. Everything is so subjective, and that's what I don't like about it.
So for people who don't know what we're talking about, so Nadeem Zahawi said the HMRC has deemed his errors in his tax affairs careless. That's basically the words that are being used.
But not deliberate.
Yeah, so this is all about the fact he had unpaid tax relating to shares in an offshore trust. This is following the fact that he paid millions to HMRC, including a penalty. We don't know the exact number, but essentially this is all about YouGov, the polling company he co-founded in 2000. It was kept in Bullshore Investments, registered in Gibraltar, and then essentially he gave those shares or some of those shares to his father, as far as I can understand, and tax experts have estimated the capital gains would have been around £3.7 million. So therefore he owed money to the taxman and he inadvertently forgot to pay it.
Exactly.
You know what? I always find that I forget my offshore shares and someone has to remind me.
Do you know what I think it was for Cameron? I think it was when he wore a Panama hat. It kind of reminded him of the Panama Papers.
Absolutely. They went quiet, didn't they?
Very, very quiet.
So that was. I was just thinking, you've got a note on your fridge saying,
Don't
"Remember
forget the
offshore
offshore."
shares." Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
How gosh.
The thing is, I think there are two things here. This careless but not deliberate is because if it was deliberate, he might be going to prison.
Well, he would go to.
That's the definition. And secondly, he's a government minister. I don't care what anyone says. I'm really terrified of the tax office, and I work really, really hard to make sure my tax is absolutely as it should be. This is a government minister with offshore shares, and he was careless. It's not acceptable.
No, it's not at his level.
No, and also there's one other bit here. He wasn't just a minister, he was the Chancellor of the Exchequer. He was in charge of the HMRC.
Not for very long.
No, but he was still there. The point is that he basically didn't pay the appropriate tax when he was the boss of the HMRC that all of us normal people are frightened of.
Yeah.
Now, I'm completely against cancel culture. I really am. I don't think we should be calling for it. But I actually don't think he can survive this because of all those things. I don't think he can.
Well, I think he's compromised himself on so many levels. And he's compromised the government too, because the questions are being asked. Do we think Rishi knew as well? What is the extent of this? I mean, the age-old adage of the Conservatives being Labour being bad with money, but the Conservatives being bad with affairs of the heart. But now we've got the Conservatives, just doing what they want, when they want, with absolutely no scrutiny.
Yeah.
It's the lack of scrutiny.
Is this the tail end of a government? Is that what we're seeing?
I think it is, but I'm really, really, really concerned what the opposition is, because Keir Starmer's treatment of women, Rosie Duffield, what has happened there? Absolutely shocking in my view.
Well, you know how exercised I am.
Well, Renee, I am so with you on this. And it's just so far from the truth. It's so far from reality, David. Politics in this country are... No wonder I'm politically homeless.
We're regressing.
We are
regressing.
Absolutely regressing.
So just in terms of Nadeem Zahawi, obviously, I think the front page of The Observer says that he's fighting for his political life. Which is probably true. Now, my understanding this morning is Rishi Sunak's actually come out and backed him. Now, if that is the case...
Oh, did he? When he was backing him, was he in the back seat of a car wearing a seatbelt?
Exactly. But you see, you say he can't survive. Now, what does that mean for Rishi Sunak? If he then stands by Zahawi, that then would make his position pretty untenable.
This smells of Boris Johnson, doesn't it?
Yes.
No, I back him. He's fired.
Yeah.
I think that's where we're going to go.
The Commons is an absolute cesspit.
Well, and it goes back to something much bigger. I've always really been frustrated about members of Parliament who have second jobs, and we've talked about this before, whether we should pay them more so they don't have second jobs.
Yeah.
But it seems to me that they can pop in, and they are elected officials, elected by us, to make sure this country runs properly. And I don't think it's okay to go and do a second job
I agree with you. I also don't agree with career politicians. Go to Oxbridge, come out with PPE, straight into
no real life experience.
No real life experience.
But then we come back to a much bigger issue, which is, shouldn't you have people who actually know something about the industries that they're the minister of?
But even go lower than that. Grass levels route here. We're talking about, should we have MPs that actually know the constituency instead of being airlifted by the heads of the parties that they represent and say, well, for political gain, you will win that. We know you will.
So that's really interesting. When I was a Conservative PPC, we would do exactly that. So we were... Do you remember David Cameron's A-list? I was one of those A-listers. And you would choose a constituency, and I used to research them because we were looking... Because you want the one with the most majority, don't you? Because you want to stay there forever. But in the end, I stood for somewhere that I thought would be a good fit, and there are lots of things happened. My dad died, and then I stood down. But the fact is, you're right. You need someone who actually understands that location. So, for example, in my home constituency of Suffolk, you would need someone who knows about farming. Because that's what we do.
And oil deliveries.
And
oil deliveries. Yes, good.
That is so important. And I think the electorate, to wake the electorate up, to wake us up, to wake me up, to not make me politically homeless, I would really love someone to knock on my door and say, look, I know the challenges of the A4. I know the challenges of education. I know the challenges of housing in this pocket of West London. I can help this.
I agree. And, you know, we know by the people that we talk to all of the time, there are lots of very, very good people who are not Oxbridge PPE, who understand what's going on. I can think of a few now who would make a great Prime Minister. But, you know, we know who they are and they're there. But it's whether or not the route is in, and also whether they want to be part of this cesspit.
I agree. I think also there is a real problem with recruiting the right people into Parliament, because actually to be a good constituency MP you've got to care. You've got to look after your constituents and worry about things like that you mentioned, like the A4, the congestion, the LTNs. There's a huge thing going on in the papers this morning about low traffic neighbourhoods, all that stuff. And many politicians go in and they use the constituency to become a minister.
Well, that's the thing. And then the other brilliant point you made was, I really do believe that the members of Parliament elected onto the Cabinet really have to know something about what they're doing. The Farming and Agriculture Minister, Theresa Coffey, was the Health Minister. She was talking about antibiotics. And then she's not. She's climate change.
She's climate now.
You know, and it's just so awful. And then the other good point you made, why would anyone want to go into politics? Would you like to go into politics? What would make you go into politics? And then, you know, we can't get enough GPs because no one wants to be a GP. Is it the media's fault? Do we make up a storm of, well, you don't want to do that, you'll be held up to far too much scrutiny. Let's just take the path of least resistance.
You know, overnight something's happened politically, and Renee and I were talking about it yesterday. But for example, you're constantly asked for quotes, so there's a 24-hour media cycle, so we are responsible.
It's looking for that got you moment.
It is. And as you know, things happen, and then you're on social media and things blow up out of all proportion where you're misquoted or whatever happens without actually telling you what happened last night. But again, we're creating this perfect storm. So why would any sane individual want to be a member of Parliament? Really?
I think we need to cut the PR. Cut the public, the court of public opinion as well, and the court of public opinion should only be when people go to vote.
Yeah, I think if we got rid of all social media tomorrow, the world would be a much better place.
Be happier.
Be much happier.
Let's talk about happy things, shall we?
Yes.
The coronation.
Oh.
It's meant to be happy.
Coronation chicken, coronation milk, coronation whatever else can we say?
Coronation Wokefest.
That's what it is.
Right, so tell us about the coronation.
Okay, No Frills coronation. It'll be 2 hours with 3,000 people, Sunday Times.
So this is King Charles wanting to pare down the ceremony. We talked about this at the beginning of the programme. In the past, it's been 8,000 dignitaries, and he wants to pare it down to 2,000. He wants to pare down the service. He's not wearing garters, is he?
He's not wearing leggings. That came out yesterday.
He's going to wear his military uniform.
Yeah, that I think is fine, and I think it's modern. I think to pare down the audience is ridiculous, and he shouldn't do it. I think it's what we do well, and we should just do it well.
Well, you see, I think the not wearing of the garters is actually quite. I don't know. I actually want to.
I'm with you.
Because I'll tell you why. I think tradition is so important, and I think tradition is the thing that links the past, the present, and the future.
I think you're right.
The constant.
Look, I wouldn't be offended by him wearing them. I would like to see it, but also I can see why he isn't, and the military uniform I think will look splendid as well. But I agree with you. There was so much in the Queen's funeral that people are like, what's that?
Yes.
Why are they doing that? And it's because of.
And lots of images speak more than words. And I think to get that conversation going will deflect from the fact, will Harry and Meghan be there?
Yeah, I mean, also, just in terms of brevity, so obviously the ceremony used to be a lot longer, and I actually think that that's right and proper. He is taking over the reign of this country, and indeed head of the Commonwealth, and it's important that we understand what that means. And so, actually, this abridged Twitter version, I'm not sure I'm so keen.
Well, I heard before I came on you saying you think it was going to be a woke fest, and you were talking about the NHS when you were saying you were at the Olympic Games opening Danny Boyle did, which I thought was absolutely remarkable.
It was brilliant.
Excuse me. But with this, I think going back to everything that the Commonwealth has faced with the charges of the abolition of slavery, with the Windrush terrible thing that happened to the Windrush people being sent back, I think he is now thinking, I actually have to do something that will calm the waters in this and will actually make people think that I am a man of the people. I am a forward-thinking king. I am your king.
But
I'm
I don't
king.
think
I'm everyone's
refugees and the NHS is going to do that.
I agree with you. But
I think it's incredibly polarising.
I do too. I really do.
And you see, the thing is, I wouldn't have done that. If I was helping him plan that event, I would leave both of those out of that. I think, as we keep saying, it's about what binds us together.
It can't be political, not what.
But do you not think this is him being as political as he can be?
Yes, yes. Because we know the king and the queen consort cannot make political comments. They cannot be seen to be outré with their information. They can't, say what they want all the time. It's very much contained.
So this is the opportunity.
So this is his opportunity to face all of these bones of contentions that have been brought up through his mother's reign, and he can then, this is his way of solution.
But I was interested to see that actually he has Renee, because they're going to travel in the 1762 gold state coach refurbished for the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. He has obviously dropped the congregation down to 2,000. He is going to be defender of the faith. I still think that's really important. But obviously he will talk about the fact he will maintain Christianity in the nation.
Well, he's the head of the Church of England.
He is. But do you remember there was a lot of talk about him being a defender of all faiths? And so he's going to be defender of the faith, but he will recognise his commitment to multiple faiths. He will also sit in Edward's chair, which is the coronation chair, and it seems he will wear the crown of St Edward and then the imperial state crown. So all of that really good. But René's point is really valid, which is what we do know is the UK is extremely good at this stuff. It brings investment into the country.
Yes, it does.
And that's why I think it needs to be bells and whistles.
Absolutely. I'm so with you.
It will be the biggest television audience again since the Queen's funeral, without a doubt. You don't need to put money on that bet, for sure.
Yeah. And the fact we're all getting a holiday. Well. So Michelle Donnellan, the Culture Secretary, she said the weekend of events will bring people together to celebrate our monarchy and the mixture of tradition and modernity, culture and community that makes our country great. Good luck with that. I don't think you'll do it with that message necessarily, Michelle.
I wonder how much of this is put out there to test public opinion as well. And if they say, I think some of it too, and I think they may then change what they want to do as a result. But look, I hope it will be a great success. I really want it to go well.
It will be.
To celebrate this great country. Should we talk also about, what are you talking about now?
Daily
Express. Oh, good. Nicola Sturgeon, my favourite person.
No, she's not.
You're right. She's not.
Seldom wrong. Let me get my Express. Gender law row is Scotland's Get Out. Now, this is a take from the Express that they are saying that the gender reform review in Scotland that is now being issued with a section 35 by Alistair Jack, the Scottish Secretary.
Never been used.
It's never been used. And that rule, that section 35, that law was made by Donald Dewar at the beginning of the devolution for Scotland's plan to become independent. And that law was there to protect the rest of the UK modernity, not just Scotland. So this has been triggered, and the Express are taking a view now. They've made a comment here of the fact that they're saying that there's a member of Parliament saying that Nicola Sturgeon has tried to reform this bill deliberately as another way through to independence.
Is that right?
Oh, well, I agree.
I don't necessarily agree with that, Renee. Only because I think she is so stubborn. She doesn't like people saying no to her. She's a bit of a narcissist. Do you know what? It's actually easier to it's more difficult to get building regulations to change a beam inside a house in Glasgow to make your kitchen than it is to change your sex.
Yes.
But imagine you'd been assigned the wrong sex at birth. Imagine.
Oh gosh, can you imagine that? Living that long for how long?
David's trying not to comment.
I am. So just in terms of Nicola Sturgeon, I mean, she is a one-trick pony. She seems to have ignored all the drug deaths that are going on in Scotland. The fact is
the failing education, the
fact is quality of life is far below the rest of the United Kingdom. And, of course, under the Barnett formula, they get paid more anyway.
Yeah.
So clearly, Nicola Sturgeon, how's she going to play this?
Oh, she's going to take it all the way to the Supreme Court in London, for sure.
But the money. The money.
Of course. But I do think for that reason, she actually knew that this would just run too far in the face of the Gender Recognition Act, because that's where the clash is with the Gender Recognition Act, which actually works very well for women and people, who are gay and all things like this in London or in England, and the rest of the countries.
Yeah.
So this law clashes with that head on. She knew that would happen. She would have had advice. And I think it allows her to then go back to the Scottish people leading up to an election and say,
we were blocked. You see, we can't do what we want.
Yeah.
It's England, it's Westminster that are blocking
we
what
need
we
independence.
want.
We need independence.
If we had independence, we wouldn't have
Well,
that.
she also seems to be changing her mind, because she then said the general election will be a de facto referendum.
She can, because that would be legitimate.
Exactly. And now she's decided that that may be not the way to play this. So she's trying to work out politically the best way to push this forward. But actually, from what I'm reading, the sort of support for independence in Scotland is lower now than it was.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, you say that, and then there's the publication in Scotland called The National, or the Nat Onal, because they've got a map of Scotland in the deep. And they put out a poll that 54% of Scottish electorate wanted independence.
Or was it their readers?
Exactly. Scrap polls, scrap social media.
Scrap YouGov.
Scrap YouGov.
Oh, that came down nicely in a full circle. Yeah, seems very good.
So get rid of them all, because there's no transparency with Nicola Sturgeon. There really isn't.
There's a very good piece in the Times today, and a comment on this actually, which says that she is looking for a role post her current role in the European Union
in The Hague.
on gender. She wants a gender role.
Well, I was in Brussels, and good luck to her. Let's hope she goes to Brussels. Claire, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
It's been a great pleasure to see you.
It's been lovely.
Very nice. Very good of you to come in. Thank you very much indeed. After the break, we'll be taking your calls, your thoughts, and your messages. This is TalkTV.